you doing? And welcome back to my channel. So today we continue from where we left off. We're still reading Old Man and the Meadow, but these are the last two parts, part 2 and part 3. Yeah, so we'll be concluding this novel today. However, I have received several requests for me to teach it as a literature lesson, but because I've already done a number of videos on it already, I cannot redo it. So the best thing I can do is make a separate video where I'm going to focus on characterization of each person in this novel, their attributes, their likes and dislikes. I'm also going to put in the setting clearly, and I'll also talk about the types of language that was used, whether there were similes, the metaphors, poems, songs, all those good things. Yeah, so I'm going to do that in the next video, but today we're going to look at part 2 and part 3 so we can conclude, and we move to Maru, the novel called Maru. I've been looking for the hard copy. I can't seem to find it. I usually buy my novels from Book World, but I've been looking for it and I can't seem to find it. So if you know where I can find it, please let me know in the comment section below. As usual, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. But anyway, let's get into it. So part 2 opens with us with Mecca at the ceremony. This is 14th July at this point. So we are told he's wearing his khaki suit and he's wearing his new shoes, the shoes that he bought from M. Pipiniaki's shop. We are told he's put in a whitewashed circle under the flag, under the scorching sun. That's where he was made to stand. And because Mecca was so loyal and he wanted to be the friend of the white man, he had no problem with standing there. But then the waiting period was so long. They were waiting for the high commissioner, the chief of the whites, but this man took so long to come. And you know, Mecca was in uncomfortable shoes, and because his shoes were uncomfortable, he needed to go to the toilet. Like, he became pressed, and for him to soldier on, he thought about his ancestors. He made himself believe that the ancestors were watching him, so he needed to be strong because the Makers, his lineage, his clan was not of weak men, so he was a strong man. So that's what he told himself, that he was a strong man, and he stood under the scorching sun until the white man came. So it's at this point we're told that M. Pipiniaki was actually a Greek man, and he was also being awarded, he was also being given a medal. So when the High Commissioner came, he gave M. Pipiniaki his award first, and Mecca started wondering whether they had forgot, like maybe he had forgotten his medal, maybe the High Commissioner had forgotten his medal. But fortunately enough, the High Commissioner came and pinned Mecca's medal on his jacket. So when this happened, Kelara was in the crowd with some other people, and one of the boys there carelessly stated, saying after everything that this man has done for these whites, they needed to have filled his jacket with different medals. And this is when Kelara realized that the payment for their son's death and the loss of their land was that stupid medal, and that medal was not going to do anything for them. So she started crying. She remembered her sons. She remembered everything she had lost to get to this point. And she felt so betrayed that she got her headkerchief and put it in her mouth and tried to muffle the cries. But she cried terribly. The lady who stood next to her comforted her. When all this is happening, Mecca received his medal and he forgot about the pain he was going through, like in his legs and the urge he had to pee. What did he do? He forgot about all that pain. He was enjoying, he was having a time of his life. So the High Commissioner then invited, the chief of the whites rather, invited Mecca to go and have a meal with them at the African Community Center. So Mecca was the only person, he was the only black man amongst these white people, and he was the only man who was wearing a khaki suit. The rest were wearing white suits. So anyway, they were waiting to go to the African Community Center, but there were like other proceedings that were happening. So during the wait, because Mecca used to speak Mvema, the people of Dom spoke Mvema and not French or English. So they needed an interpreter to like tell them what the white people were discussing. So when they sat on Mr. Falcone's veranda, because after that medal giving. After that award ceremony, they went and sat on M. Falcone's veranda, and they were all using a different language, right? So then Mecca was trying to ask the Father Vadamea. Father Vadamea was the missionary who was who Mecca knew. Rather, this is the man who he gave his land to. So Mecca, in his mind, thought Father Vadamea was his friend. So when he tried to ask him what time they were going to community center, the father like dismissed him with his hand. Like, like he dismissed him with his hand and gave him a weird look. So Mecca, it kind of dawned on Mecca that these guys were not his friends at this point, but he had so much grace for them. But he felt really weird on how the father reacted to Mecca trying to inquire about what time they're going to community center. Anyway, after the father dismissed Mecca, right? The father kind of realized that maybe his mask had fallen off a bit, and Mecca actually saw him for who he was, but he didn't put much thought into it. But it clicked, but he didn't put much thought into it. When it was now finally time to go to the community center, all the other white men started going into their cars. Remember, this is during colonialization, and these white men were colonizers. So no black man at this point had a vehicle. Only the whites had vehicles. So Father Vadameas invited Mecca to join him in his car as they headed to the community center. But instead of telling him to sit in front where he was, he told Mecca to sit at the back. And there was no one else in the car apart from the two of them. So anyway, when Mecca reached the vehicle, he removed his shoes, the shoes that were killing him. He removed the shoes and they headed the community center. When they arrived, there were different chiefs from the Dom village. There were different chiefs. So the chiefs were stayed on one side, while the white people were stayed on the podium. So the High Commissioner started giving a few speeches. When the speeches were taking place this side, the waiters started serving the drinks. So the first drinks that were given was sparkling wine, and Mecca drank all of it at one go without thinking twice about it. So when he finished his alcohol, when he drank his cup of wine, he started harassing the servers to bring him something stronger, because he was thinking, what is this? He had never drank wine before, so it was a weird feeling for him anyway. So he started telling the houseboys to bring him stronger wine, stronger alcohol, bring him more alcohol. So the boys started serving the black people, the African black people, whiskey. And M. Falcone gave strict instructions that they should serve the sparkling wine first, then they should serve red wine. They should finish all the wines before they start drinking whiskey, because whiskey was reserved for them, for the white people. So he was expecting, I think in his mind, he expected the blacks to be content with the wine, but they didn't like the wine. So Mecca harassed these boys until the boys started serving him whiskey. And all the blacks were drinking whiskey, while the whites were drinking wine. So this infuriated M. Falcone. He was upset. He couldn't even pay attention to what the High Commissioner was saying. So eventually, the whites, because when people are drinking alcohol, they become unruly. So when Mecca was drunk, and when the interpreter had finished interpreting what the High Commissioner had said, the High Commissioner had said things like, no, we are friends, like you Africans and us are friends, and we've created this relationship, we're more like family, blah 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 blah. So Mecca then decided to also go and give his own speech. So when he went up, he invited the High Commissioner. He told him, no, since you've said we are friends, I'm inviting you to my house so you can come. We eat the goat that my brother-in-law has brought for me. But then the chief of the white had declined this offer and said, no, if I'll find time so you and I can have a meal together. So when this was done, M. Falcone realized that the people were getting restless. So there was going to be a bit of confusion. So they decided to move the chief of the whites and the other white men. They all left. and left the black men, left the African men to drink until they were content. So when they all left, as usual, they were drinking. Then different chiefs started talking about how, like, they were walking to the podium and talking about how how can the whites say they are friends when they have never eaten in the same plate or drank from the same cup. So anyway, this conversation was going on. They were all having fun. At this point, Mecca was too drunk that he slept. So M. Falcone's Mr. Falcone's personal assistant, his name is Gule. I'll put his name somewhere. But he and some of the commanders came and chased the Africans from the community center. I told them, no, you guys have had enough to drink, so you have to leave now. At this point, Mecca was asleep. So when they were leaving, because we're leaving in a hurry, no one remembered that Mecca was sleeping. So the person that his neighbor where Mecca laid his shoulder just pushed him out and they left. So Mecca is then woken up. So when they left, Gule didn't even try to see, like, check through whether there was someone else. They just locked the community center and left also. So when this happened, Mecca was woken up by heavy rains and there was thunder and it was dark. So he woke up, he struggled to leave the community center because of the thunder and the lightning, part of it started falling. So it was a challenge for him to leave and it was so dark. So he finally managed to find the door and walk out of the community center. Then he was, in his mind, he was heading towards his house. So he saw some light, like a light from a torch. He didn't have a torch, he didn't have his papers on him. And while he was sleeping, his medal fell off. It went to his armpit, then eventually it fell off. So he didn't even have his medal either. So anyway, as he walked, that's the first thing he thought about. He touched himself and found he didn't have the medal. And in his mind, he was thinking, I hope someone has just stolen it, because if it's stolen, I might find it. But if it's lost with these heavy rains, the medal is gone. So when he saw the light, he felt like the ancestors had sent for him someone to rescue him. Because remember, it's dark and it's raining heavily, so he couldn't really see properly. When this light approached him, he discovered that these were actually commandants. They were constables, rather. They were black African constables, in fact. So when these constables saw Mecca, their first assumption was, this man is a thief. He's come to steal from the white people, because of where they found him. They found him in the residence of the white people. That's how they beat him up. Mecca tried to explain to them, like, no, I'm a friend of the whites. The High Commissioner is my friend. I was just given a medal. They didn't hear. They whipped him. They beat him up so badly that he even passed out at some point. So then they dragged him to the police station and they told him, we're going to you have to sleep here and wait for Gule in the morning. So then Mecca trembled at the thought of meeting Gule, because everyone knew that this man, M. Falcone's assistant, didn't like black people. He was really a mean person. So he trembled at the thought of meeting him the following day. So because of that fear, right, accompanied with the way he was treated, he started insulting them. He started insulting the constables. He insulted them the whole night until he passed out. His voice even went and he slept. When he woke up in the morning, he was sleeping. He was put in a recently painted room. Just a short add up, because of the rain. It was so raining, he didn't have an umbrella. So he was really wet and he was really dirty. So they put him in a newly painted room, but it was not even properly painted either. Yeah, so they put him there. Mecca woke up in the morning and he was embarrassed that he slept, because he was thinking, why did I sleep? Anyway, he woke up in the morning and these constables took him to Gule. They took him to Gule, and when he arrived, Gule immediately got his whip. It's a horse, that the whip that they use to whip horses. He got that and whipped Mecca like 10 times on his shoulders, without even knowing why Mecca was taken to him. You see how bad these people were? Like, he didn't even give Mecca the chance to explain or say why he was there. But he immediately he saw that this constable was brought. He whipped Mecca without knowing why he was taken there. So eventually an interpreter is called, and the interpreter tells um, Gule that this is so and so, na 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 na. Then Gule says a number of things, and then this is after he's whipped. Then he tells the interpreter to interpret what he had just said. So the interpreter said, no, everything has been cleared now. There was just a misunderstanding. Na 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 na. Then Gule got a cigarette, and Mecca didn't want to. Like, he didn't want to. Like, they were not friends. At this point, he was upset with the white people, with the way they treated him. So he didn't accept the cigarette until Gule. Then he just pushed the cigarette in his mouth. Anyway, eventually, Mecca starts heading back home because the interpreter told him, no, everything has been sorted out. You're now free to go home. So he started heading home, and on his way he met a panther rat, and it's at this point his superstition started coming in, and he said the praises that he needed to say when he saw the panther rat. He said, I now know I'm on my way home because of the panther rat. Like, I don't know why I didn't realize this earlier. After that, doves poop on his head, and he counts those as blessings anyway. So he finally reaches home, and he finds there's a huge crowd of people. Some are picking up the scraps from the storm because most of the huts had fallen. So others were picking up huts from the different furniture from their houses, while others gathered around his house, trying to figure out where he was, whether he was killed, and whatever. So he finally gets in the house, and Kelara is not home. So she arrives with her sister-in-law, yes, with her sister-in-law Amalia, and she started wailing and crying and weeping. She was rolling from one end to another, and she cried terribly. Amalia joined her. They undressed. They were rolling. Isomba's wife was the youngest wife amongst these wives, so she also undressed and started rolling down. So anyway, before this rolling part, like before Kelara and Amalia started crying, before they arrived, when Mecca arrived, Mvodo, his nephew, started praising the Lord. No, we praise God and that you are back. And Mecca was upset with this, with what Mvodo had said. He was upset, and evidently so. Like, I mean, he needed to be upset with the way he was treated, but he was so upset that he started saying, I don't want you to be talking about this, na 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 na. Ignatius Ibede, the catechist, also talked, like, tried to encourage him, like that the reason as to why this has happened. He mentioned the Lord's name also, and Mecca was so furious that he chased Ignatius away. So Kelara and the other ladies started crying and wailing and rolling from one end to another because Kelara felt betrayed by the husband. She felt he should have made better decisions. He shouldn't have given his land, because it felt like that meadow was payment for the land that he gave and their two children. So this really upset her. On top of that, they beat him up and treated him so badly, because when he arrived, he looked like one of those beggars that sat outside the church, and Father Mayas always chased them. So that's how he looked. He looked really dirty, and this upset her even more. So she cried really badly. And yeah, so when all this was happening, sorry, I forgot to mention, when Mecca had gone to the community center, Kelara and Amalia went back home and started crying the same way they were crying at this point. They were rolling down. Kelara alone was rolling down and crying. She even called her husband an old ass something. She insulted him. She felt so betrayed by him. She felt humiliated, especially with what those children had said back when the award was being given. So this was the second time she was crying and rolling on the floor. So eventually, Mecca is in his house, in his hut, and different people are coming. They are, crying and all those things. when all this is happening, Nti started talking about how the whites were never really their friends. So like this is the point that they all realized that the whites were never really their friends. They just came and took what they could take. Because they even remember how the first white man was fought off by the people of Dome. They remember how he was killed. In fact, Mecca's father was one of the people that went and fought the white men off. And after they killed this first white man, Mecca was the one who was in charge of keeping the skull of this white man, like his skull. But when Mecca became Christian, he threw that after his baptism. So this is when they were all realizing that the white men were never really their friends. They were just there to benefit from what they had. So end of chapter 3, part 2 is just them having this conversation and having this realization. And T is then considered a very wise person for his age, you know. So they realize that what they had gone through, or what Mecca had gone through, happened to all of them. It just didn't happen to Mecca alone. It happened to all of them. Chapter 3, the last chapter, is where we find Egamba wanted to go and confront Gule about what had happened, but he went back. Like he didn't reach because he was also afraid of how he was going to be treated. In fact, he went looking for Mecca. Egamba left before Mecca arrived. So he went to look for him, but he didn't arrive because he was thinking, what if they've killed him and I might end up being in the same situation that Mecca found himself in. So yeah, so this is basically the summary of Odd Man and the Meadow. It's just sad. It's just sad that Mecca had to go through this. And it's sad that it took him so long to realize that the colonizers were never his friends. So yeah, so there you have it.